Hello, everybody.
Oh, new style.
Yeah, well, workshopping some things. How are you?
I'm good. I don't know if our listeners know this, but I've been moving, and I will tell you, 15 years in the same house, moving is a lot. It is especially if you're downsizing, if you're moving into a smaller place. This just piles and piles of stuff around our house. So much stuff we need to get rid of. So I know you pride yourself on having everything ready, a 100 disc changer, a Cuisinart.
I've got it all. Yeah, I'll never throw away anything around here.
They're all right there, but when you move, you're going to have to make some decisions.
That's why I'm never going to move. Well, that is the sound of my friend Kelly. I am Alex. This is Dirt Nap City, the podcast about interesting dead people, and boy, do I have an interesting one for you today. Kelly.
Is he a mover? A shaker?
He was a mover and a shaker.
Okay.
I would say.
I like it.
It's right in my wheelhouse, 20th century white guy.
Do people still say mover and shaker?
I think I do. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if people do, but, I think we're old enough to not really be in touch with things that people are saying today. But, some of these phrases, they come and go. And, I think that we're on the right side of things.
I just recently said, I said to somebody, I'll be out of pocket. And I was told that out of pocket, meaning that I wasn't going to be available. I was going to be out of town. So, don't try to call me or whatever. Yeah. Don't expect a response because I'm out of pocket. And I was told that phrase can also mean a little crazy or out of control. Like I'm going to be.
That's not true.
Well, it is a secondary meaning. I asked ChatGPT and she said.
That's silly. That's silly. You shouldn't have a phrase that means two very different things like that. Out of pocket only means that you're not. I usually say I'm going to be in the basement.
Yeah, or I'm going to go see a man about a horse. That's what I like to say.
That means I've heard that expression. That means you're not going to be available.
Usually means I'm going to pee.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I need to see a man about a horse.
So you wouldn't use the term "I'm out of pocket." I'm going to be out of pocket if you're just going to the restroom.
Well, I mean, you literally are out of pocket, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
There is a pocket or a pouch that you're out of. So.
Sure.
Is this guy's name Dick today that we're going to be talking about?
Nope.
Right.
Sorry. But his name is Melvin.
Melvin.
Yeah. He was born in San Francisco in 1908 and died in LA in 1989. You know when someone dies in LA, they're probably in show business, right?
The only Melvin I could think of is Melvin Lack, who started Lack's Furniture in Texas, but I don't think it's that person.
Nope. And we should do a show about him one day.
We should. Yeah. Al from Austin knows
Gave
him.
me a bottle of champagne when I got married.
Nice. Well, so this is Melvin. He died in LA. Where'd you say he was born?
It doesn't really matter. It was San Francisco, but that doesn't really give a clue. But it 1908 to 1989. Usually when they die in LA, that means they were in show business. And I'll give you the clue that he was known as the man of 1,000 voices.
Oh, Mel Blanc.
Mel Blanc. Yeah.
Mel Blanc. Is it Blanc? I thought it was Blanc.
Well, it was interesting. He was born Mel Blanc, Blank, changed it to Blanc because when and this is a very common thing that we find at Dirt Nap City, that when he was 16, a teacher told him that he would amount to nothing and be just like his name, a blank.
Ooh.
So he changed the spelling of his name to Blanc to make it sound more, I guess, French. But it was originally blank. I think that's a very rude thing for a teacher to say, but not at all uncommon in what we found among the greats.
Oh yeah,
At
yeah.
some point, a teacher tells them they're terrible and worthless.
He struggled in school. Probably drove an ambulance at some point.
Do you think the teachers should start doing more of that to make people greater?
Start like really well, that's what they say they do in the military is they cut you down and then they build you back up.
Yeah, I don't think there was any building up here. He was 16. He's almost out of school.
Yeah, you'll amount to nothing. But when he got older, he probably could write a blank check or had a blank check for whatever he wanted in life.
True. Every check he wrote was a blank check.
Yeah. No, I don't think teachers should do that. I think that's not a good teaching technique.
All right, so don't do that. If you're a teacher, don't do that.
Yeah.
We'll just continue to breed mediocrity
and have people change their names.
Sure. Well, so not too. Other than that real story, not too much of a memorable childhood. I think he was a pretty good student and very creative and talented, particularly in music. He was a conductor, actually, an orchestra conductor.
Okay.
And after
not
he
graduated, not a trained conductor.
No, not that kind. But after he graduated from high school, he was the youngest orchestra conductor in the country. He was only 19 years old, and he was a conductor of an orchestra. And then on the weekends, he would go and perform in vaudeville.
Oh wow!
He was in San Francisco and Portland. I think he graduated from high school in Portland, Oregon, and then he would do the vaudeville circuits in Washington, Oregon, Northern California. It was just a talented guy. Well, he made his acting debut. Now, remember, there's no television back here. We're talking the 1920s.
This is radio.
Radio was huge. So he made his acting debut when he was 19 years old. This would be 1927 on the radio show called The Hoot Owls.
Oh, I like that. The Hoot Owls.
The Hoot Owls, yeah. I think back then they used to call owls Hoot Owls. That's a thing. I think with Beverly Hillbillies, I used to call them.
Yeah, it's like owls. A shade tree.
Yeah, right. It's a little redundant, but
it's like what it does, and then it's its name. A shade tree gives you shade, as opposed to any other tree that doesn't block the sun, an invisible tree.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or an owl that just talks. A talking owl would be different than a hooting owl.
Yeah. Well, he was on the Hoot Owls and really took to the radio, got to do little characters and voices. And remember, the radio is just such a medium where you really have to, your voice really matters.
Like a podcast.
I think exactly. I think once TV came, it was your face that mattered, and your looks. But really, on the radio, it's such a audio medium that you're really making characters, making them different from one another. I mean, you could have two people on a show and represent 30 different characters, and people are using their imagination. We do. Yeah. When are you going to drop this character, by the way? I'm a little sick of it.
Yeah. I think 2026. 2026, I'll come back to somebody more realistic.
Go back to your real voice, maybe your real accent.
Yes.
I think, by the way, for someone who has never been to the U.S., your accent is remarkable.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I really worked on that. It's hard to lose that Russian accent, but I think I've done it.
Yeah, I think you have. Well, in 1933, he was married by this time, and he produced a show with his wife. This show was called Cobweb and Nuts. It sounds like a morning zoo, like a morning radio show, right?
Yeah,
Cobweb and Nuts. And that show, I always think of these radio shows as being played like in the evening, or this was a late night show. This was like 11 p.m. Cobweb and Nuts. I don't know if it was saucy or anything, but it was a late night show, Cobweb and Nuts, and it was he and his wife just playing a lot of different characters. Well, it was pretty popular in the region. By then, though, he decided to move to L.A. and he got on the Jack Benny show as a regular. I don't know if you remember the Jack or hear about the Jack Benny show.
I've heard of it. I don't know that I've ever seen it, but yeah, this was one of those classic variety shows, right?
Very popular. Well, I suppose. I don't think it was. They didn't have a lot of it wasn't like Ed Sullivan or anything.
Okay.
But Jack Benny played played a version of himself that was real pompous and played the violin really poorly and all these people around him, but he believed he was really good, and all these people he had kind of enablers around him, and he was kind of the straight man. Jack Benny was, and then all these crazy characters would pop in and out. Well, that was a radio show, and then that lasted forever. I mean, that was in the 30s. I think it finally migrated to TV later. Jack Benny was just at one time was just one of the most popular entertainers in the country. So you get on that show and play a bunch of crazy characters. People like you. He even had his own show in 1946, but only lasted a year or two.
Mel
But
Blanc
Jack Benny was but that's kind of that was kind of where he got popular. Was the Jack Benny show. Well, in 19
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
So you said it was Blank originally. Was it when he changed the spelling? Is Blanc like?
No,
it's actually Mel Blanc.
Yeah.
Okay, so I should say Mel Blanc.
Sure.
Okay.
He joined in 1936. He joined Leon Schlesinger Productions. You ever heard that name, Leon Schlesinger?
I feel like I have. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they always used to on. Like Porky Pig and Bugs Bunny, those guys sometimes used to make fun of Leon Schlesinger, like as being their boss.
Okay.
And there was a lot of kind of inside jokes about Mr. Schlesinger, and Porky Pig couldn't say it real well, you know.
Right, of course. It is kind of hard to say, but it's a funny name to say.
In 1936, he made his first film in a movie. These were all short movies, you know, that they would show like in the movie houses.
They play them ahead of the regular movie.
And sometimes they would show, I think you would go and they would just show just shorts. Like I think on maybe Saturday mornings, the kids could go and maybe they'd show 10 shorts. It wasn't all just before a feature. This show was called, this short was called Picador Porky. And he played one of Porky Pig's drunken friends who dresses up like a bull.
Okay.
Back then, even though kids loved this stuff, the themes were a little more adult than they were like on Saturday morning cartoons. Porky Pig would have a bunch of friends that were getting drunk and making mayhem. It wasn't just cute, adorable stuff. Very different than Disney, who was consciously trying to make things for children.
Right.
I think Looney Tunes was just trying to make funny stuff and crazy stuff, and because they were animated, they could make outlandish stuff. Didn't really matter, but kids would like it. I mean, nothing was really risque or anything, but they they took on themes like, especially during the war, they took on Hitler, and very different than Disney, where they weren't really trying to cater to kids. Well, he soon replaced the voice of Porky Pig. The guy who played Porky Pig originally actually did have a stutter, and that's why Porky Pig stuttered at the beginning. But because his stutter was so bad, it was costing a lot of money because they had to keep redoing takes. So they got Mel Blanc, who took over as Porky Pig, retained the stutter, but only for kind of comedic purposes. Remember, Porky Pig would stutter, try to say something, and then he'd say a different word.
That was easier.
It was easier to say. And this show was called Porky's Duck Hunt, and that was the first appearance of Daffy Duck.
Okay.
And then those guys became like a staple of Looney Tunes, which Leon Schlesinger then produced. Wow. So let's go through some of these voices. I've mentioned a couple, Porky Pig and Daffy Duck. Do you remember any other voices that
well, he did Bugs Bunny, right?
He did Bugs Bunny. Bugs Bunny was in 160 short films.
Wow.
Now Bugs Bunny, what was his? He had like a Brooklyn accent, right?
Yeah. Kind of. I made a wrong turn at Albuquerque.
Yeah, and he was he's kind of a trickster.
Yeah.
So the guy that created Bugs Bunny, I thought this was interesting. Bugs Bunny's catchphrase is, right?
Tell me.
Picture him. He's eating a carrot. He's just chilling. He's got his legs crossed, and he says, "Yeah." What's up, Doc?
What's up, Doc? That's right. That's right. I'd forgotten that.
So the guy who created him says, well, what's up, Doc is a very simple thing. It's only funny because it's in a situation. It was an all Bugs Bunny line. It wasn't funny. If you put it in human terms, you come home late night from work, you walk up to the gate and into the front room, the door's partly open. There's some guy shooting up your living room. So what do? Well, you run if you have any sense. The least you do is call the cops. But what if you come up and tap him on the shoulder and look over and say, what's up, Doc? You're interested in what he's doing. That's ridiculous. That's not what you say at a time like that. So that's why it's funny.
Yeah.
In other words, it's asking a perfectly legitimate question in a perfectly illogical situation.
Right.
That was the secret sauce.
Out of context. Yeah.
That was the secret sauce for what's up, Doc. That he would just like all chaos would be going down, and there'd be bullets flying, and literally on some of those shows, right?
He's also very calm in all those situations. Like he's not phased. He's not phased by the chaos going on around him.
Because he always comes out on top, right?
Right.
He always knows there's about to be an anvil falling on you, so he can chill. Yeah. Well, Bugs Bunny was in a like I said, 160 short films, second only to Porky Pig. He was in the most of the short films. Porky Pig. Now I mentioned the stutter. The stutter is also to kind of sound like actual grunting, because Mel Blanc said, well, if a real pig was to talk, he would talk like, he would grunt, and then that would come out like a stutter.
Yeah.
Who else you got? You got Daffy Duck. I mentioned him.
Yosemite Sam.
Yeah. No, wait. Daffy Duck was kind of a screwball. He would over the top stuff, right? And he had a lisp. Remember, he'd have kind of a crazy lisp.
Yeah.
And he said the reason he had put on the lisp was because he said, well, if you had a beak like that, of course you're going to talk with it.
I was just about to say the beak. It's kind of almost how you form your mouth if you're trying to talk like that, like a beak.
Yeah. And Daffy Duck, remember, was also the funny part is they would have these like spin-off characters like Duck Dodgers. Remember Duck Dodgers was Buck Rogers. So they would like put these guys in a different scenario, and then they would give them a different character, but the character would still be Daffy Duck playing a character. Or it would be like a scene completely set in Italy, and it would be all the same characters, but they would all have Italian accents.
Right.
Which is probably hard to do, play 13 characters all with Italian accents, but the exact same characters that you've been playing before. That's really pretty clever.
And I guess he was playing multiple characters in one show. Like he would play the part of
absolutely.
Did he do Foghorn Leghorn? He
did. You mentioned Yosemite Sam. He said Yosemite Sam was the hardest one to do because he had to get real gruff and hard his throat. Yeah. He did play Foghorn Leghorn, which was a big rooster, right? Like a huge tall rooster with
I say. Maybe Colonel Sanders kind of vibe.
Pay attention now. Yeah.
Or
Southern dialect.
Actually, if you've been watching the Righteous Gemstones, the one you just
baby
did,
Billy,
baby Billy. That's Foghorn Leghorn and Baby Billy. That'd be interesting to listen to those two back to back. I say. Pay attention now. Hey, you need to acting. You need to act. I'm going to play Jeebus.
I think he had almost sounded like a Southern lawyer. Or maybe a congressman or something like that. Yeah. He had kind of an importance sound about him too.
Yes. Southern aristocracy.
Who else can you think of?
Was he Elmer Fudd?
Elmer Fudd, right. Elmer Fudd had rhoticism, which is when you replace your L's and R's with W's, right? So, Silly Wabbit.
Silly Wabbit. Twix it for kids.
And that... all these little ticks and features of the voices made it so you didn't have to come up with somebody with, you can only go so far with this guy has a high voice and this guy has a low voice and this guy has a gruff voice, this guy has a squeaky voice. But by giving them these kind of speech impediments, it also
really
made them
distinguish them.
Yeah, and he said that they would show him a picture of the character, and he would think of, all right, what does this guy must sound like with the way their face looks, and then, but the thing is too, then you have to remember all that stuff. I think that's
you almost have to like implant it into your brain and be able to recall. You're not recalling a phrase, you're recalling the way they talk. So any phrase has to, that would be, I mean,
without computers though. Without computers. So you'd say, so they say, how did I do Pepe Le Pew last time? Well, now you have to set up the reels.
Tape recorder.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Play it back.
Do you remember Pepe Le Pew?
Pepe Le Pew, yeah, he was always trying to get that cat. He was always trying to the cat that had a paint. The cat would somehow get a stripe of paint down its back so it looked like a skunk, and then Pepe Le Pew would chase the cat in a romantic fashion.
Very French. Though, right? Like a French lover type. Marvin the Martian. You remember Marvin the Martian?
Oh, yes. He talked kind of like this, I think. Ooh.
Yeah, I think people loved him. He was one of those characters that didn't show up a lot, but you got excited when he'd show up, right?
I'm going to give a shout out to my buddy Jim, who has several tattoos now, but his first tattoo was Marvin the Martian. I remember he was so proud of it. He was like, "Yeah, that's a pretty cool tattoo, honestly."
Yeah, like I say, it was kind of one of those more obscure ones.
Yeah,
but not obscure, not super obscure. Like everyone knows about it. He did the voice of the Roadrunner, which was just
meep, meep.
Yeah. He did Sylvester the Cat.
Okay.
Which he said was basically just his voice with the like a
pat. Yeah, he kind of had a you know what that's called? I think it's called a plosive.
Yeah, right.
I've also heard it called that sound, a bilabial fricative.
Right. In sound editing, you hear like there's devices to keep that away, right?
To get rid of the plosives, yeah.
Yeah.
The plosives are the P. That's what those pop filters are for. Get rid of
he played the Tasmanian Devil. Yeah, and Tweety. Remember Tweety?
Oh yeah, Tweety Bird. I am just a little bird.
I twat, putty tat.
Yeah.
And Speedy Gonzales. Now, Speedy Gonzales is interesting because
andale.
Yeah, and his cousin Slowpoke Rodriguez.
Yes, I forgot about Slowpoke. That's like Evil Knievel and Awful Knaawful, like two opposites.
Now,
Slowpoke Rodriguez. That is such a great name. Speedy
Gonzales was interesting because Looney Tunes and Warner Brothers decided that was probably that was a stereotype that they didn't want out there. So for years they shelved it and you couldn't find it. Like in the 90s, you could not find Speedy Gonzales. And interesting thing happened. LULAC, I forget what it stands for, but it's the Organization for Latin Americans, for advancement of Latin Americans.
Okay.
They protested. They said that Speedy Gonzales was a cultural icon among Latin people, and that he was a heroic Mexican character. He was quick-witted. He always came out on top.
Right.
And they love him. Like in Mexico, they love Speedy Gonzales, and they consider him not a cartoonish stereotype that's negative, but somebody that they really liked. And speaking of tattoos, I think there's a lot of Speedy Gonzales tattoos out there.
Yeah. If you've got a Speedy Gonzales tattoo, send us a picture, not at dirtnapcity.com. We'd love to see it.
Yeah. So Speedy Gonzales came back, but it's one of those things that you're not sure if it's appropriate or not, but Speedy Gonzales has been endorsed by LULAC. So
yeah. I mean, that is such a fine line, such a treacherous thing to have to go through. I'm just kind of pontificating here a little bit about those stereotypes or things where you take somebody's culture and you use it as part of a character. And is it making fun of them? Is it appropriation? Is it an exaggeration or a stereotype? And are stereotypes? I mean, stereotypes are based on reality, right? And think about the number of kind of, the Foghorn Leghorn and Elmer Fudd and Yosemite Sam. These are all white guys basically that are being
it's
stereotyped as well.
Right. Well, Hank Azaria faced this with the character of Apu.
Yeah.
And stopped doing it. And there's a whole movie about it. And it really hit him hard.
The trouble with Apu, or the problem with Apu.
And that wasn't necessarily a positive stereotype. It was just a Indian guy that worked in a convenience store, and I think they were making fun of that trope. And he would a lot of times say things about Hinduism, and it's like you say, it's a white guy making jokes about a culture, and I think they did cross the line a few times. With that, but with Speedy Gonzales, I don't think they were making fun of Mexicans. They weren't making fun of Latin people. He did have a Spanish accent, but like I said, he was a heroic. He would always come out on top, just like Bugs Bunny. He was always outwitting the other guys.
Right.
So if you're watching it from the lens of that culture, you don't see anything wrong with it, right? If you're Indian and you're watching The Simpsons, you're thinking, oh, it was kind of a low blow, whatever he just said. It wasn't done in the same. Even though Hank Azaria, like I said, he felt really awful. I don't think it ever occurred to him, but that's the problem, right? That it doesn't occur to them.
Yeah. And eventually, I mean, Apu was a major character in The Simpsons for years and years, and I remember some Simpsons episodes though where Apu was the smart guy, where he kind of like came out on top. But yeah, again, I don't know. I can't say what's right or wrong, and I think it's very contextual. But I'm glad to hear that Speedy Gonzales, because I always enjoyed Speedy Gonzales as a character on the shows. I thought he was funny. I thought he was clever. But maybe we need more Slowpoke Rodriguez.
Well, and there is now in voice acting, there is a conscious effort to make sure that when people are doing
the voice is of that culture.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's so much voice work these days because you have video games and you have all these different channels and all these different outlets. That voice acting is a major thing.
But even that, I mean, I can understand it on one level, having the character be, a Latin character to do Speedy Gonzales. But does that mean for Foghorn Leghorn you have to have a old Southern guy? Is that why are some of these accents okay and some of them not? I don't know that we can get through all that, but just for I don't know, it's hard to say.
I think if they're the hero or the foil, I think if Wile E. Coyote was of a different culture, right, and always had the anvil dropping on him, that wouldn't be
now Wile E. Coyote isn't it? Didn't he talk a few times?
Yeah, he did.
And he had kind of a sophisticated English accent or something like that.
There was a couple times where they kind of broke the fourth wall on that. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if my favorite one was
the camera.
My favorite one was one where they punch a time card. Like they show Roadrunner and
they're coming to work.
They're coming to work
to do their thing.
They're like, "Hey, how was your weekend? Pretty good, yeah." And they're just like out of character, but and then they go and they chase each other in the desert. But I thought that was
right. And then they punch out, and then they're like, "Hey, all right, see you tomorrow."
Yeah, exactly. Like this whole thing was just acting. I love that. He actually started. He did those things outside of Warner Brothers. Also, like he started as the voice of Woody Woodpecker, which was not. Looney Tunes. That was I think that was Merry Melodies, right? Or maybe no, that was Universal. And then he had to stop doing that when Warner Brothers signed him to an exclusive contract. But he invented the laugh, and they kept that Mel Blanc's laugh in there until 1951. And you know how at the beginning of Woody Woodpecker he says, "Guess who?"
Yeah,
that was Mel Blanc's voice. They kept that in there until they stopped making Woody Woodpeckers, like in 1972. So that's pretty cool that he was also when his contract with Warner Brothers expired, his exclusive contract expired in 1960. Then he started working with our friends Hanna-Barbera.
Oh, okay.
And like he was the voice of Barney Rubble.
Oh,
he was the voice of Cosmo Spacely, Jetson's boss.
Yeah, Mr. Spacely.
Spacely Sprockets, yeah. And he was the voice of Captain Caveman. I think we talked about him on the Hanna-Barbera.
Yeah. Wow.
This is kind of the third of the trifecta with Disney, Hanna-Barbera, and now Mel Blanc. I think we've covered all the cartoons that I want to cover until Matt Groening passes away.
Right.
Yeah. But he also worked with Chuck Jones and even did some Tom and Jerry cartoons in the 60s. And he was the first voice of Toucan Sam, the Fruit Loops mascot.
I can't even imagine what I guess he was just pitching Fruit Loops, right? That was just, that's all he did. Toucan Sam wasn't actually a cartoon, right? It was just
no, he was like really? They had. Well, no, it wasn't a show.
Right.
But he was a cartoon.
It was pitching Fruit Loops. It was
right.
just to. I want to just go back real quick, and we don't have to talk about this much, but just kind of acknowledge Hank Azaria because doesn't he do a large number of the voices on The Simpsons?
Yeah, he does like all the minor characters.
Yeah, and so, but I can't think of anybody else that would be as universally used for voices. I mean, I guess
Billy West. Billy West does. Yeah, he does all the other cartoons. Like he does a lot of. He'll do like Futurama, and he did I think King of the Hill and all those.
So Billy West is still alive.
Billy West is still alive, and so is Hank Azaria. So we can't really talk about them much.
But Billy West is like the modern version of Mel Blanc.
Yeah, I think he'd be like, oh, he does those and those. I think Billy West did SpongeBob SquarePants.
Oh, well, okay.
A lot of those kind of cartoons. I think voice acting, like I said, because of video games, voice acting is a huge career, and there's a lot of people that you would never know their faces that are making great money and stars. Like they go to those Comic-Con.
Yeah, Nancy Cartwright.
Oh yeah, sure.
Bart Simpson, but also James Earl Jones, right? I mean, he's the voice of Mufasa. He's the voice of Darth Vader. He's the voice of wasn't he the voice of several other cartoons?
Yeah. No, he is in Dirt Nap City, so we could talk about him.
Oh yeah. Well, okay, so he did all these voices that we grew up with.
Yeah. So in 1961, Mel Blanc was in a bad car accident. He fractured his legs, fractured his pelvis, and he was in a coma, and he was non-responsive.
Ooh.
And there was nothing they could do to really, this was in the 60s. They probably didn't know as much as they know now about how to get people out of comas. The doctors tried everything. They didn't have any luck. And then he was at UCLA Medical Center. One of his doctors decided, we've tried everything. We're giving him all the medicine we know to try. We're doing all the things we know. There's one thing that I'd like to try. Let's try to address his characters. Let's try to talk to his characters. And his doctor came up to him and he said, "How are you feeling, Bugs Bunny?" And Mel Blanc, who had been in a coma for days, says, just fine, Doc. How are you?
Whoa.
And then he says,
this is a true story?
This is a true story. He says, "Is Tweety there too?" And he goes, I taught putty tat. Came out of his coma, went home a few days later. He was all like, that's how they brought him out of his coma. Isn't that crazy?
Wow. Well, I mean, it's actually when you said he wanted to try something, I thought, well, maybe it had something to do with the characters, but just that immediate response, and yeah, that's amazing. It
just shows there's different parts of the brain.
Conscious is acting is still working, but his character of himself couldn't come to life until those came back.
They say when you sit with somebody who's in a coma and talk to them, that there's parts of them that are, taking in that information. You hear about people that are in a coma a long time, they get visited, and then when they come out of it, and you try to tell them what they've missed, a lot of times they're like, "Oh, I did know that because you've been telling me that."
Right.
But I don't remember you telling me that, but somehow I do know that. So it's hitting somewhere. I think music also tends to, for some people, touch a part of their brain and get them out of the coma, but just shows there's a lot of things that we don't know. But if he hadn't done that, who knows what would have happened? I mean,
he might not have ever.
They might have just pulled the plug on him. Well, he went home after that and he sued the city of Los Angeles because where he had the accident was at a place they had called Dead Man's Curve. There had been 26 accidents in 2 years, in a 2-year time, and they changed the route. They changed the way the street went because of he sued him. He actually had I don't think other people had the resources to be able to sue.
The blank
get
check
him to change. Yeah. Well, he died a year after Roger Rabbit came out. You remember Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Yeah.
It was the only time he had ever worked with any Disney characters, and he died a year after that came out.
Was he Roger? He was Roger Rabbit?
No, he was, but he was all of his characters.
Okay.
He smoked a pack of cigarettes a day from the time he was 9.
Wow.
Until 1985. So like from 1917 to 1985, he smoked a pack of cigarettes a day. And so, yeah. But the doctors said that his voice, he had unbelievably, unusually thick vocal cords that were similar. The only time they'd ever seen those was like famous opera singers. That would give him the range to go from Tweety all the way to Yosemite Sam. It's a pretty big range.
Yeah,
right?
It is.
So I don't think they did an autopsy, but when the doctors, while he was alive, the doctor said, "Well, your vocal cords are amazing." That reminds him of opera singer. His last recording session was Jetsons the movie that came out in 1990.
Okay.
And he's buried in, I think at Forest Hills in LA with a lot of the other Dirt Nap City, residents.
Yeah.
You know what his headstone says?
That's all, folks.
Yep. Did you just guess that, or did you know?
I did. I just guessed it.
Yeah. That's all, folks.
That's all, folks.
That's, I mean, that's awesome, right? That's a great headstone.
Yeah.
He was the first voice actor to ever receive on-screen credit. Prior to that, they weren't even thought of as real actors. They just didn't get any credit, and he demanded on-screen credit and worked tirelessly to for that industry to get more credit and get paid what they were worth. And his biography is called Melvin the Mouth.
Well, when you said Melvin, if you had said Mel, I think I might have gotten it faster.
Sure.
In guessing, but when you said Melvin, I had to think about it a little bit. This is probably a bit of a dying art because I feel like AI is going to be able to replace. I don't know if you've ever asked ChatGPT to say something with a certain accent or with a certain, like in a certain way, but you can actually ask ChatGPT, the voice version, to tell you something with a German accent or a Jamaican accent or a Midwestern accent, and
like our voices.
Yeah, there's so much manipulation you can do with voices now electronically, and it isn't like you have to do it. You can create a model that will have a certain voice and then just use that, right? And so voice actors, voiceover people, I work with a lot of people who do voiceover work for corporate videos and training videos and stuff like that. And it's getting harder and harder to get those gigs because you can do so much with AI.
I think they did that in that movie, The Brutalist, that just won the Academy Award. That they used it for Adrian Brody was supposed to have a Hungarian accent, and apparently he didn't do a great Hungarian accent, and they used AI to
take his voice and make it sound Hungarian.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So what do you think but AI is not going to be able to, I don't know.
I wouldn't say anything after that phrase. I would just leave it because
right? It can do
yes,
everything.
it will be able to at
But
some point.
whenever people criticize AI, whether it's from writing or music, or I mean the silly songs that we put at the end of these shows, I hear one criticism a lot, and I'm probably going to stand by this until I hear otherwise, is that it doesn't have as much, it doesn't have soul.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the same soul as a guy looking at a picture of a pig and making up a voice. You might be able to approximate something like that. The creativity side of AI is limited, in my opinion. You couldn't tell ChatGPT, make up a new style of music that I've never heard before. You can't say, show me an instrument that I've never heard before. You can't, I mean, it's derivative, right? It just takes things that already exist.
Yeah.
And people like Mel Blanc, or just creative people in general, come up with things that have never existed before. And I think that's where humans still, for now, I still think are better.
Yeah, for now. I'm not criticizing or advocating for AI. I'm just saying I've been using it more recently, and I've been pretty amazed at some things that I didn't think it can do that it can do.
Yeah.
But that's off topic. Mel Blanc, he proved his teacher wrong at the end of the day, right? He became pretty well-known person who I guess younger generations might not know his name, but they'll know the characters. Those characters will be around for a long time.
Do you think Bugs Bunny is in the culture today? Like, do you think, I mean, I know like at Six Flags, I think owns those characters, right? So
Yeah.
they have those mascots walking around the park. And I feel like Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck are iconic, but I wouldn't know where to go watch. I mean, other than YouTube, I don't know if they're like front and center of the culture these days. I mean, do young people know those characters and know why they're funny?
I don't know. That maybe we may just assume that they'll be part of the culture forever. I might assume that and be wrong. That could be that, that 50 years from now, nobody's going to know who they are anymore. I think a lot of it is commercials, right? I mean, if you think about the Peanuts now aren't they in some insurance, like
Yeah,
insurance commercials?
they've been MetLife
MetLife.
characters for 50 years, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and that seems to be where a lot of people see them for the first time. Other than the specials, the specials that get played year after year for the Peanuts are classic, and they're ones that um, people today show their kids. I don't know that any of us, you or I, are excited enough to sit down with our kids and show them. Oh, look, it's Bugs Bunny. We need to watch this. My
But I'll
kids
tell you
go,
what, that stuff was funny though. Like the stuff from the 30s and 40s.
yeah,
Like I said, it's not just made for kids, and it's very smart.
yeah,
It's very smart stuff,
good
and
writing.
it'll make you laugh. Yeah. And the voices are what makes it funny, I think. I mean,
Yeah.
not all of it, but you look, there's a list here of all the characters that he played, and in some of these minor ones, like, George K. Chickenhawk. It's just
Yeah.
just a funny.
Oh, I remember. Was the chicken hawk the one that had the little tiny? It was a little tiny bird, and he's like, "I'm a chicken hawk, and you're a chicken." Was he the friends with? He was always trying to capture Foghorn Leghorn because he.
Henry Hawk is what you're thinking of, and the Chicken Hawk was his father,
Okay.
George K. Chicken. But just the fact that his name he's a father, so he has to have a
Middle
name of
initial.
a middle initial because he's
Yeah.
an adult.
Yeah.
That's funny to me. And Henry Hawk was, he was the small one.
Yeah. Who was all full of piss
with
and
a loud
vinegar.
mouth. Yeah. He was Foghorn Leghorn's foil.
Right. Because
Like, that's just funny, man.
Yeah.
And then and then he played Adolf Hitler. That in a lot of different cartoons, and part of the thing was making him look like an idiot, making him look like a boob.
Yeah.
That was not for children, back then. And just like Disney did, they used a lot of animation for the like basic training. And some of it was not probably culturally appropriate by today's standards. But that was another place that they used their stuff. I see a character here called Mark Anthony and Pussyfoot. Those were like two animated, like a big dog and a little cat. Mrs. Daffy Duck, Nasty Canasta. Do you know who Nasty Canasta was?
No idea. Do you?
It says he was like an outlaw, like a cowboy.
Okay.
That he would mess with Daffy Duck when Daffy Duck would go into an old saloon or something.
Which happened frequently.
Yeah. Pat and Mike were the Irish characters that he had, called Pat and Mike. But sometimes they would disguise themselves as one. They were like leprechauns, when they would disguise themselves as a human named Seamus O'Toole.
And one would stand on top of the other's shoulder.
Yeah. You remember that?
No, I'm just guessing, but that's how leprechauns would do that.
Because they thought Porky Pig was trying to steal their gold. So they would.
Of course.
Wow. The Penelope Pussycat is the name of the cat that looked like a skunk that Pepe Le Pew was always going after.
Yeah.
Then you had Petunia Pig.
I remember.
That was Porky's girlfriend.
Yep.
She looked just like Porky, but she had she had pigtails, right?
She had pigtails, of course, right.
He played a character called Professor Calvin Q Calculus.
Yeah. Wow.
I just think this stuff is pretty classic.
You can go pretty deep with these.
Sure. Well, that's Mel Blanc.
Nice. That was a good one. That is right up your alley.
Well, that's all, folks.
Remarkable gentleman with me this morning has probably made more people laugh without being seen than anyone else I know. His name is Mel Blanc, and if that doesn't quickly ring a bell, let me add that Mel Blanc has been and is the voice of such characters as Bugs Bunny, Porky Pig, Elmer Fudd, Pepe Le Pew, Speedy Gonzales, and dozens and dozens and dozens of other characters. Good morning. I cannot tell you what a great pleasure it is to meet you, having heard you and been delighted by you all of my life.
Hey, thanks very much, Gene. Nice to have you say that.
Mel couldn't be with us today, but a number of other people have. For instance, Tweety Bird is with us today.
Ooh, I thought I saw a putty cat. I did see a putty cat.
And that putty cat was probably Sylvester.
Oh, fluffer and fuckatash, buddy. Oh, putty cat.
Then there was Daffy Duck.
Oh, Daffy is sort of a crazy little bird that says that Bugs Bunny is despicable.
Roadrunner I loved always.
Oh, all Roadrunner says is meat, 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 meat.
And then another chicken from the South, no doubt, Foghorn Leghorn.
Pay attention, Gene. You know what? A foghorn, you looking for chicken? See that little house says D-O-G? That spells chicken. Go get them, boy.
And Speedy Gonzales.
Oh, Speedy Gonzales, fresh muscle Mexico. That is when can't give the mice a thing to fast too. Epa, andale.
Who didn't love Yosemite Sam?
Yosemite Sam's one of my favorites, too. Shoots gumdrops.
Everybody's laughing in the studio because you're wonderful.
Thank you.
Pepe Le Pew.
Oh, the little French skunk. It says the pussycat and catch a rinky some.
Elmer Fudd.
Oh, well, I'm looking for rabbits.
And the rabbit he was looking for was the most famous of all characters, Bugs Bunny.
Hey, thanks very much, Doc. I'm glad you like him, too.
And Porky Pig.
Porky Pig is a very timid little hog.